So my argument is that the U.S. patent system in its current state needs to be reformed, especially in cases of the technological sector, because we've reached a point where companies can file for as many patents as they want, and they don't necessarily have to use the patents, and they can, recently at least, been accepted as very broad ideas. Unfortunately, I don't mean to attack Apple in this case, but Apple has been the biggest perpetrator of this with a lot of patents for ideas that most would consider just applications in mobile devices that anybody should be able to use. The biggest example of this is two specific patents. One for the idea of using a gesture to unlock a mobile phone, which I think the audience can agree every phone uses. Every phone is always used. And then another is for the idea of using multi-touch, which is using multiple fingers on one screen at once. And that is actually something that shouldn't be allowed in technology because it's been used in many applications before. Another issue is that because of this, there's been legal battles, and because of that, other companies feel the need to acquire patents so they can protect other parts so that their business isn't lost. This has created a lot of situations lately where companies are buying other companies or just bunches of patents simply so that they have something to back themselves up with. Another issue, as I kind of highlighted earlier, is the idea of prior art in many other situations, such as paintings and basically any other patent. There's this thing called prior art where if it's been done before, you can't file a patent for it now. So if another company came up with an idea and already applied it, but they didn't file for a patent, you can't come along and say, oh, I like that idea, I'm going to patent it now. But this has created a lot of legal troubles because companies who are making legitimate products, HTC, Google's Android, Samsung, Motorola, all these companies basically create these products and then they're sued in not only US but also foreign markets and aren't able to sell them, creating an antitrust area, much like was seen with Microsoft and Windows back in its early days. So the majority of this problem, as it presents itself, is that companies can't continue to make new products in fear of violating patents held by other companies that aren't even being used. And the only real solution to this problem is if the patent board itself were to become more acquainted with current technology and were to hire more experts on the area rather than just granting patents as they see fit. And unfortunately, this kind of creates another issue where the patent system itself and the way the clauses are written don't necessarily allow for new things to come forward very easily. There's a lot of old ideas in the patent system that were created, when the patent system was first invented, maybe a long time ago, where there were things, there wasn't much technology. There wasn't much going on in technology at all, or if anything. And most of the idea for patents were that you could patent an idea that you had about, making a desk or making a chair. And many would argue that, every chair looks generally alike, but that chair doesn't necessarily need a patent to protect the idea of it being a chair. Certain features might be, but anybody can make a chair. Any company can make a chair. So why shouldn't technology be the same? Why can't any company make a tablet that, while it might look the same, while the design might be, a square where there's a screen, why should another company not be able to make a similar product even if there are differences? A lot of this, culminates into current products now not being able to change much. Look at least in the past 2 to 3 years, most technology products have not changed. The iPhone 4S is basically an iPhone 4 slightly upgraded. And Android phones have basically been the same. Every year there's probably 30 phones released, and they're all basically the same phone with different brands on them and slightly different designs. But then the next year comes along and there's 1 or 2 features, but most of the new features can't be used because other companies hold patents that it would be violating. Another issue is that it's mostly affected the tablet market now. Tablets in general are the main legal issue, because most tablets look similar and act similar, but not every tablet is the same. I mean, for example, there's the Nook and Kindle, which are technically tablets, but they're not quite the same as an iPad, but they're coming under fire by Apple because they're the same product. So that's the main issue, is that we can't continue this system of filing for things that we think are good ideas in practice, but then don't use them, and we can't file for broad issues that aren't really, that are applicable to every other product on the market. And that is basically the issue.
All right, Kyle, you've got a proposition. At the beginning, it's phrased almost like a policy claim, so you want to be careful about that. There's no preview of what the structure is going to be, and as you get into the speech, there isn't any distinct organizational structure for us to follow. So we're just randomly hearing this information as you seem to present it, and it doesn't build a very powerful case. I do think that you kind of explain the concept to some degree. It sounds like a summary of an idea of an argument, but it doesn't sound like much of an argument, because you mentioned all these things about, like at the very end, tablets that might be running into these problems. Well, it doesn't appear that the patents have prevented the Kindles and the Nooks and all those other things from being on the marketplace and functioning, since the Kindle is one of the biggest selling of those tablets in comparison to, let's say, the iPad. I'm wondering what's going on here. Has there been a lawsuit? Has Apple sued? I don't have any proof that there's a lawsuit. There's nothing here that tells me that there is a legal issue with these tablets that is going to create a problem for anybody, consumers or businesses. The information about phones is the same sort of thing. You make this claim that says that the phones haven't changed much in 2 or 3 years. I don't know that everybody would agree with that. Maybe you were right. I have no way of evaluating that except to look at my own phone and compare it to the phone that I had 2 years ago, which is substantially different. So I'm going, what is he talking about here? If there's something that Apple is doing that they're claiming other people are invading or infringing on their patents with, you need to be able to cite an example, show us a lawsuit. Let's hear from some executive at Apple that's claiming these kinds of issues. You mentioned this idea that there are a whole bunch of companies that are buying up other companies so they can get access to their patents, but I don't see any examples of this. And in fact, it seems to at one point that that there's even a contradictory point, because you're talking about these very examples here where you say at one point they don't have X, Y, and Z, and the next point you've got all these companies out there that are doing exactly the thing that you say they're not going to be able to do. So that's just it's just confusing there. The whole idea of prior art, you explain that concept a little bit. But if prior art is true and it exists the same way for chairs, where's the proof that it's not being applied that way to technology? I didn't hear any information that says that. The problem here is that there's no evidence in the argument, and so as a consequence, we've got like your interpretation of some argument or issue that you may have read about or heard about, but I don't have any proof on this that this is a problem or an issue to worry about. All right, thank you.